Welcome to the second part of this series, this two-part series of my 6-month Harbor Freight Chicago Electric brand rotary tumbler review. In this second part, I'm just going to discuss the modifications I made. If you want my thoughts, feelings, what I've learned in the 6 months since buying one of these, check the link above for the first part. I know YouTube tends to promote things kind of weird, and it doesn't realize this is a two-part series. But yeah, so I'm just going to get into modifications. I've made 3 major modifications to this unit. First were the rollers. These things come with these ridiculous nylon stops. They're just awful. I don't even know the point of them. What I did to fix it was I just got myself a little shower door roller. Just little, they're a couple bucks at a hardware store for a pair of them. And then I also bought a 4-pack of, I think they were 1-inch L brackets. And then some bolts and nuts for the hardware to hold it all together. And so the repair cost, I think maybe $7 at the most. Call it 10 though, if we'll shoot high. So for a small modification to this thing, it's pretty easy, pretty simple. I just drilled it with using a basic power drill. There was nothing fancy. There's nothing highly skilled about that. With every rotary tumbler on the planet, there's going to be certain wear points that are going to wear out on a regular basis. And that's what I started changing right away. The first, obviously, were the rollers, because that was quickest and easiest. Second were the bushings that come on these things. They're plastic and pretty cheap. Of course, I say that, and I got 6 months out of mine before it really needed to be replaced. So, and you can buy them off the tumblerbench.com, I think is where I found some, and they're like $2 and something to change them or to buy replacements. So it's not that expensive to replace the bushings, but I wanted to upgrade a little bit. So my dad was kind enough to make me these bushing or bearing blocks, and I found some bearings online that would work to hold the shaft. The shaft is about 8 millimeters ish in diameter, and I found these RF-08 bearings. I could buy about a 10-pack for $5 off of Amazon, but I guess they're actually for roller skates or skateboards. But so my dad made a bearing block that would fit those bearings, and I just locked them in there, and yeah, and then I just threw those on. It took a little bit of effort and a little bit of work, but it worked. And then now the advantage of those types of bearings is that I never have to grease them again. Those bushings I had to lubricate at least every other week, and by the end it was down to about every other day. Whereas these are sealed bearings, so I'll never have to replace them. And if I want to replace, and if I do need to fix them, I'm just going to pop the bearing blocks off, pop new bearings in, and off I go. So a simple, easy modification. I suppose if you're getting a higher end rotary tumbler, they should already have sealed bearings in them, not the stupid plastic bushings. But I saw somebody, I didn't watch the video, but they had a video up of replacing the plastic bushings on a Lortone 33B. So I don't know if Lortone still does that or not, or if they do it at all. But yeah, so I don't know. Take it with a grain of salt. Like I said, I don't know anything about those. I just know about these Harbor Freights, and those plastic bushings were among the first things that I wanted to replace. So my third and final modification to these things is the belt. The belt is notorious on these types of tumblers for breaking and snapping very quickly. I think when I first had this thing, my first belt broke within 12 hours. And that was with lubricating the bushings. A lot of people say their belts break right away, but I think it's because they didn't lubricate their bushings right away. I did all kinds of research, and there's all kinds of people saying you buy this belt or that belt, and you can buy 10 packs of the original belts for $15 off of Amazon. And I kept researching until I found, not necessarily, it had nothing to do with the Harbor Freight tumbler, but with any pulley really at all. they make these things called a polyurethane belt. And I'd never heard of this before, so I'm just going to explain it like you haven't either. But these polyurethane belts are amazing. I bought a 10-meter roll from Amazon for I think 13 bucks. These units take about a 31 centimeter chunk of the stuff. And I bought 10 meters for 13 bucks as opposed to 10 belts for $15. And these belts are amazing. And I know I'm including these belts on a Harbor Freight review, or Chicago Electric, however you want to describe it. But these belts are universal. If you have any rock tumbler or anything that needs a belt, these things are amazing. I love these things. And I will just take a minute to explain how I put these together. Okay, so obviously I've got a little problem with this squeaky belt here. As you can see with these modifications, let me shut that off. Okay, I have the other one running for the moment, but you can hear it's much quieter. My dad and I made these plates. We're kind of still in our test run with this, and it has almost zero clearance for the roller or the barrel to get through there. And it's still grinding a little bit, causing a little bit of dust. But yeah, so it's still a work in progress. And then this motor, as you can see, is at an angle a little bit, but that's because when I first installed, you know, these DIY projects turn into a bit of a, you know, trial and error thing. When I installed these rollers, there was nothing here to keep the, when I installed the bearing holder, there was nothing to keep the shaft from sliding this way, and that's eventually what happened. And when it did, the pulley went that way off center, and it bound up the cord and caused the motor to pull in. And that was all while I was at work. So by the time I got home, this whole thing had gotten, this motor had gotten stupid hot. And as you can see, it kind of melted this motor mount here, and melted both of them. And I just haven't replaced them yet or shimmed it up. They're a couple bucks. You can buy this exact part off of the tumblerbench.com, which is a great place to get all of your Harbor Freight or Chicago Electric tumbler parts. They're cheap, $5 shipping on everything. So like I've said before, I've replaced this motor before. That was, again, my own idiotic fault. I had adjusted it too tight without changing the belt length. So it ended up burning up the original motor. This motor, obviously, I just spent an entire night, I don't know how long it was like that, bound up, and came home and it was still trying to run, but nothing was spinning. And I don't know how long it was like that, but it was long enough to melt that, and this motor is still in good shape. So I will say that the parts you get from the tumblerbench.com are solid parts. But for now, I'm just going to get this belt off of here, and then I'll show you what I do to shorten them. I've seen a lot of different ways of trying to join these ends together on these polyurethane belts to melt them and everything else. I've seen lighters, blowtorches on knives, etc. What I do is I just simply, I have an electric stove in lieu of a hot plate. I do have a hot plate out in the garage, but I just use my electric stove. I have this old cookie sheet that's nasty, and I think I use it for, or used to use it for making jerky or something. But I just throw it on the stove. I have an electric stove. I turn my stove to 6.5, and then when I get done, I should be able to smoosh these ends together, and they should join together kind of like a wet kiss, I think you'd want to call it. They kind of smush together, and you'll see them bubble up. And I just joined this together without doing that, and they kind of look like that when it was done. And the belt ran all of about 15 minutes before it came apart again. So I'm just gonna, yep, it's nice and liquidy. And I smush it together, got a nice little, and then honestly these things don't get that hot. I just squish them together with my finger, and I hold them together that way. Just kind of keep them lined up by feel. I know it's not very exciting because you can't see it, but I know some people get all crazy like it's going to burn them or something, but honestly it's not that bad. So it should look about like that. And then I just let it sit for 15 minutes. I trim the little knobbies off. Alright, so there's all kinds of different guides on how to get rid of that little thing here, but all I do is I take my little jewelry side cutters, I just kind of get in there and kind of snip away with it. Okay, now I'm satisfied. Time to go put it back on. So I shortened the belt. This is the belt that was on there, and this was the belt that had been on previously. I just shortened it, like I said, took about 1 millimeter off. And let's see if we still got that squeak. So I guess my final thoughts and feelings on the whole Harbor Freight modifications and all in all, these bearing blocks, I don't know how my dad did those for me, but honestly, I was probably going to make them out of just a piece of 1/2 inch plywood or 1x or something I had laying around. So thankfully, he made them out of steel for me, so they'll last a very, very long time. They'll outlast the tumbler at this point because it's the highest quality part on the entire tumbler. You know, like I said, the rollers, swapping the nylon stops for the shower door roller was, call it $10 on the high side. The belting cord was $13 to get 30 of them out of it. I'll get 30 belts out of that stuff, out of that length. And of course, that's not really necessarily a Harbor Freight specific repair, but I'm just going to include it in the price towards the total. So that's $13. Got $10 here. The bearings cost me $5. The block, like I said, that was going to be free. That was just a matter of labor trying to design one out of wood, or my dad made one out of steel. So it was a scrap wood I've had laying around, by the way. So I'm not going to count that in the cost. So you got $5 into the bearings to replace the bushings. You have $10, more like $7, but we'll call it 10. $10 into the shower door rollers to replace the nylon stops, and then you have $15, call it 15 to go on the high side, for the belting cord. So together that's $30 in repairs, and I picked the unit up for $48 out the door. So for $78 total, a little DIYing, and I got a decent tumbler that's still $30 or $40 cheaper than the other unit I was considering was a Lortone 33B. So I'm still way ahead on price. The unit runs great. The motor's fine. I'm getting rocks out the same quality as everything else. Like I said in the first video, I bought the unit for the price of the barrels, basically. And I threw another $30 in repair and modifications into it. And of course, I'm including the belts into the modifications, and I hate doing that, but because that's any type of rotary tumbler on the planet is eventually going to need to have the belt replaced. So it's not a Chicago Electric specific repair, but yeah, I keep saying that and I need to stop. But call it $30 plus the $48 for the unit. Even if I paid the full price for the unit, I think they're $69.99 right now at Harbor Freight if you walk in the door and pay full price. That's still $100, and that's still cheaper than the next highest brand that I was looking at. Of course, there are other tumblers on the market, and I'm not saying they're better, they're not worse. I'm just saying that, this is the one I went with. This is the one I researched. This was the easiest to get my hands on and was most widely reviewed. So, would I do this again with a Harbor Freight? Would I buy another one? I don't know. But that idea is tempered by the fact that my ultimate end goal is to build my own tumbler. So, would I buy another one? If I had no option, or I had no desire to build my own tumbler, yes, I would absolutely buy another one of these. And in fact, it would be really handy to have a third one, especially if I could get them at a discount, the 25% off, even 20% off. I mean, they're still cheaper than the individual parts. So for sure, I would buy one at a discount. Also, with eventually building my own tumbler in the future, part of the reason that guided me to buy these ones specifically is there are so many videos on how to modify these things and tear them apart and make them just better. Like, people replace the chassis, they'll replace just about everything on these. And they're really rotary tumblers are really a stupid simple machine. Yeah, I love these things. Would I buy them again? Yeah, if I could get one on a discount, absolutely. If I could buy one for $50 again, I'd buy it all day, because the barrels alone are worth that much. And then even if you just throw a cord on it and run it for 2 or 3 months before the well, like this unit I was running for 6 months before the bushings ran out. Even you run it for 6 months till the bushings run out, and then swap it over to a different system, I mean, you're still coming out ahead. You still got 6 months of good rocks out of it. You still got, and then you can reuse the parts, and the motor will probably still be good, so you can still use the motor on another project. So, yeah, I love these things. If you don't mind doing a little DIY, these tumblers are great. But if you want something straight out of the box that's going to run without issues, yeah, you might want to look at a different a little higher quality brand. But you don't mind farting around with it and tearing the thing apart and having some fun with it and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. These things are fantastic and a lot of fun. So I hope that helps you make a decision in the future. And if you got anything useful out of this, hit that like button. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button. Honestly, doing either one still helps me out a lot, especially with my tiny little channel and it's growing. And thank you for watching. I hope it helped, and I will catch you later as I show more stuff that came out of these things. Bye.